baseball, the game we all grew up with. I read this account in one sitting. You will, too. That's a nice compliment. Jim, great to have you on ESPN Orlando.
Thank you, Jerry.
You played baseball as a kid growing up, right?
Yeah, I played in the sandlots of Chicago when I was growing up.
And then even along the way into the minor leagues?
Yes, from 1947 to 1954, I played 7 years of minor league baseball and managed 1 year in the Florida State League in 1954. That was an exciting time.
Sure. I read in the introduction of your book, you pointed this to me when we met face-to-face. Rule 1, it all boils down to the money.
Right.
Rule 2, remember Rule 1.
Right.
Elaborate on that, please.
Well, you know, the thing is, in 1947, the average salary for a big league baseball player was $11,000 a year. In 1910, they just passed the $3 million mark per player. That's average. Some are making more, some are making less. But, you know, there's a contrast between the way it was then and the way it is now as far as monetary concerns are.
Hello, Jim. I wanted to ask you about your love of baseball. How did that originate, and what attracts you to the game?
I was born and raised in Chicago, and Chicago's always been a Chicago Cubs town. And my father took me to the ball games and bought me my first glove. And, you know, I played sandlot baseball. There was no little league or anything like that at that time. And we just came in with scuffed knees, and when we knocked the cover off the ball, we took electrician's tape and tied it around the baseball and hammered nails into the broken bats, and that's how I grew up. And then I played high school baseball in Chicago, and we had a regular league of all the schools. And as a matter of fact, Phil Cavaretta went to Tyndall High School in Chicago. I didn't play against him; he was a little bit before my time. But it was a great time. And then when I was 17, I was playing semi-pro ball in Chicago, and a Chicago Cow signed me to a minor league contract. And shortly after that, I went into the service and spent 2 years in the Army of the Occupation in Germany in 1945, 1946, and came out in 47 and went directly into the minor league system of the Cubs.
Tonight is Major League Baseball's Midsummer Classic, the All-Star Game. We'll have it here on the radio on ESPN Orlando, 1080 The Team. You have a chapter in your book talking about the All-Star Game.
Yes, you know, maybe most of the listeners do not know how the Hall of Fame began. Briefly stated, in 1925, the city of Chicago decided to have a World's Fair starting in 1933 and 34. And they would draw people from all over the United States, especially the West, and all over the world. And there was a sports director for the Chicago Tribune named Arch Ward, and he came up with the idea that he would go to the 16 Major League ball clubs and the owners and to the commissioner and ask them if they would be interested in providing their best players in each league to play against each other in a one-time game. And they all agreed that that would be a good idea, and he thought it would coincide well with the opening of the World's Fair. And that's how the All-Star Game started.
Hey,
not many people know that it was in conjunction with the World's Fair and not just something put aside. And it became a one-time thing, but it became so popular that it was called the Midsummer Classic. And the first game was held in the old Comiskey Park in Chicago, and then now it's held in cities all over the United States. But that was the beginning of the All-Star Game. It's interesting that the 18 nominees in an American League that were chosen that year wound up in the Hall of Fame.
Wow. Yeah, it's a great story. You have different chapters in what is an easy read. It's a paperback book. Baseball, Is This the Game Your Fathers Watched? You've got a chapter on breaking the color barrier, the reserve clause, on relocations, expansion. One of those, obviously, I mean, I grew up listening to a lot of baseball on the radio. And television, though, has meant a great deal to the growth of this game, right?
That's right.
Comment on that factor as you even witnessed that firsthand during your lifetime.
Well, you know, when I played, the reason I chose 1947 as a start of the major changes in baseball was the fact that that was the year that Jackie Robinson broke the color barrier. It was also the first year that I played professional baseball. And as a result, I observed and I played and lived the part. You know, I'm 85 years of age, and I was able to live in that era where there was no television. I lived through the Depression, and then I observed the modern era and the major changes in baseball since then, and there have been many. You know, we talk about the ball players. We know Mickey Mantle. We know Chipper Jones. We know Albert Pujols. We know all of the ball players. They're almost a household name. We know the managers. We know Bobby Cox. We know the various managers. Well, we know absolutely nothing about umpires.
And you've got a chapter on that, right?
Did you know that there are 9 umpires in the Baseball Hall of Fame?
I would not have known that.
So I wrote a chapter about umpires, and many people that have read my book have said, you know, that's one of the best chapters in your book. Because we didn't know anything about umpires either. And then to top it off, in 1950, I can't tell you the results, but I want to give you the flavor for it. It's about the 1932. It's in the addendum. It's not a chapter.
Right.
It's in the addendum, and it's about the 1932 World Series where the Babe calls his shot.
Sure.
In other words, that was the series that Babe Ruth supposedly had pointed, and then the next pitch he hit out of the ballpark. Well, in 1950, I played for Charlie Root, R-O-O-T. He is the one that threw the ball to Babe Ruth. And you have to read the chapter to understand the full value of that chapter, because it tells the absolute truth. And I will read you this. I believe that I am the oldest man in the United States that knows the truth about the story that I played for the man who threw the pitch to Babe Ruth. And that chapter is one of the highlights of the book. And as Bud Hedinger said, he said in a kind reference to the book that it was that addendum that really set the book off, because he for 76 years, there's always been an argument of whether he pointed or whether he didn't.
Jim Forbes is our guest. Jim has written this new book, Baseball, Is This the Game Your Fathers Watched? And it goes really from the late 40s to today, America's ever-changing national pastime. The book, again, you could order. It's from Legacy Publishing, and you can find out more about it online as well as baseballchanges.com.
Jim, I can only imagine your viewpoint from the changes that have happened in Major League Baseball and baseball in general, from the equipment standpoint, what they used then versus what they use now.
Well, you know, do I have a second?
Sure.
Okay. In 1920, there was a player named Ray Chapman. He was playing for the Cleveland Indians, and they were playing the Yankees. And the Yankee pitcher was a fastball sidearm pitcher, and he hit Chapman in the ear. He lost consciousness. They brought him back to consciousness, then he lost consciousness again, and he never regained consciousness. He died the next day. Okay? It took baseball 51 years to insist that baseball players wear protective helmets.
Wow.
Can you believe that?
Crazy.
It is crazy. and the thing is, the years I played baseball, I mean, they threw at us all the time. I hated to come up after somebody hit a home run. You know you were going down.
I bet, especially
sure.
with the
And there was
equipment
no protection.
Yeah.
And so that was a huge change. Another one of the huge changes is in 1961, the American League went to 10 teams instead of 8, and they went to a 162-game schedule.
Okay.
The next year, the National League added 2 teams, and they also went to the 162-game schedule. So that was a dividing line between the old era and the new era. And, you know, you can't compare statistics because, you know, for example, Babe Ruth, he hit his 60th home run on the 154th game. Roger Maris hit his 61st home run on the 162nd game.
Right.
That would have given Babe 8 more games to come to the bat maybe 25 more times.
Sure.
And maybe he would have hit more runs. As a matter of fact, in that September, he hit 17 home runs in September. So it's conceivable that he would have hit maybe at least 3, but we'll never know.
Yeah, no, it's pretty insane. That's what baseball's home run controversy used to be. So much of what it is now involves steroids, and you have a chapter in the book that talks about steroids.
I got a book on steroids and how the unions refuse to allow their players to be tested.
Hey, let's do this in our last couple minutes together. If you had the ear of the commissioner or they made you the king of baseball, what immediate changes would you bring to the game? Any?
Well, I'm not a real fan of the designated hitter rule.
Okay.
Because, you know, baseball was always 9 players playing against 9 players. And when they went to the designated hitter rule, they changed the game so 10 players are playing against 10 players. I would like to see all of them go to the designated hitter or go back to what it was before.
What about the salary cap? Are you in favor of a salary cap for baseball?
Yeah, I am in favor of a salary cap for baseball, you know, but people, the money people, I've got a chapter, and I mentioned this in the book, that, you know, the moneyed teams get the best players. I mean, they've done some things like the draft has helped even it out, and then revenue sharing, where each team puts money in a pot and they divide it among the least successful teams to the most successful. But the teams with the most money, they still can pay that penalty, the tax on top of it, and still get the best players.
Are you shocked that in your lifetime the Chicago Cubs have not won a world championship?
Yes, I am, because, you know, they've got a beautiful ballpark, and I played in that ballpark because they brought me up at the end of the 49 season for 2 weeks as a non-roster player to take a look at me. And so I was able to take batting practice and infield practice and have my parents there, and that was special. And that was in 1949, and my dad died in 1952.
In last couple questions, players today, are there a couple of guys that just shock you of their talents, their gifts?
Well, the medical profession has advanced so far in the last 65 years that there was never any consideration with diet. There was never ever any heavy weightlifting in the old days.
Right.
And other guys played themselves into shape. Today, they're monitored. They watch how many pitches they throw. The pitch counts was not even thought of in the old days. I mean, they handed the ball to a pitcher, and he was expected to finish the game. Today, if a pitcher pitches 6 innings, he's considered to have had a good game. The specialty relief pitcher has changed baseball.
Sure.
And that's why most of not most, but all of the batting averages have consistently gone down.
If you are a baseball fan, we know that you'll really like this book. It'd make a great gift as well. It's Baseball. Is This the Game Your Fathers Watched? Taking us from 1947 to the present, America's ever-changing national pastime. It's published by Legacy Publishing. You can find out more online by going to baseballchanges.com. The author and Orlandoan, the Chicago native, Jim Forbes. Jim, thank you very much for the visit.
Listen, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
We'll hope we get a chance to talk with you again, but enjoy the All-Star game tonight and the rest of the baseball season, okay?
I will.
Thank you, Jim. Jim Forbes, our guest, Orlandoan. The book again, Baseball, Is This the Game Your Fathers Watched?